8 cases of coronavirus were reported today here in San Diego. And joining us live to break down the latest developments is Supervisor Nathan Fletcher. Supervisor, numbers reported today seem a little lower than we've seen in quite some time, including percentage-wise. Can we read anything into that?
Well, there's no one individual day. You don't want to read too much into any individual day. I do think in general the trends are heading in a good direction, and that corresponded to when we had the additional kind of tightening of the dimmer switch a little bit to lower the number of exposures and settings, particularly in indoor places. And so we have seen a general trend. We had a few days over the weekend that was a backlog in the state data that's been well documented. They were behind on reporting, so that spiked us a little bit. But in general, we're heading in the right direction. We've got a ways to go to get below the state guidance of where we should be. And then the real challenge is when we get there, get in acceptable rates, figuring out how we stay there.
Okay, so last week the county took steps to beef up its compliance team. You and I have kind of talked about that in the past as far as getting people to actually do the things they're required and supposed to be doing to help us all as a whole. So this compliance team hired more people, opened a 24-hour hotline. Give us some insight, if you can, into what exactly they're doing and what effect that's had so far, if any.
Well, what they're doing is particularly focused on those egregious violators, those folks who are just willfully, blatantly saying, I'm not going to follow the public health orders, to go out and investigate those and then potentially serve them with public health notices ordering their closure. But again, in order for that to be effective, we do need the help and cooperation of law enforcement. We saw our district attorney begin to take action last week on some of those folks. And nobody wants to be punitive, and no one wants to harm people. And we're all mindful of how difficult this is. But if we don't get the spread under control, we're going to see further damages to our economy, to our businesses, our ability to get kids back in school. And so the public health orders are put in place to save life and to save our economy and jobs, and we really do need compliance.
All right, so with that in mind, there's a lot of, let's just say restaurants, for example. One might be doing everything by the book and taking things outside and keeping people safe, and one might not necessarily be doing that, but rules apply to everybody essentially the same, generally speaking. But over the weekend, a comedy club that was operating outside of La Jolla was shut down. How does that any different than an outdoor movie screening, for example? So my question really is, like, are these blankets being put over these groups of businesses that isn't necessarily fair when it doesn't apply to each one individually?
Well, I think the public health orders are designed to try and limit particularly indoor type settings. And so that was the type of setting that wasn't allowed to be open at all. Again, we have moved a lot of things to outdoors. So if you're in an outdoor setting, and you're allowed to be, then you should operate and operate safely, consistent with the guidance for outdoor settings. But those entities that are in just willful defiance, that they're not allowed to be open, they shouldn't be operating, that are simply going to say we're going to do it because we want to, are also places, as we've seen, outbreaks tied to them. One of the gyms that recently insisted they were going to stay open despite the public health orders is now a documented outbreak location. We've seen them in churches and religious services. And so, again, it is an action designed to keep our whole county on the right track and the right trajectory. And so for those folks who just choose to defy them, all they're doing is harming everyone else in San Diego County.
It feels like a lot of them are just, in this case, just trying to stay afloat in any way that they can. Is the compliance team investigating the large weekly gatherings in Ocean Beach? We talked about this earlier in our newscast that have gotten some recent attention. Have they looked into settings like that?
No, they have, and they're working with city officials to try and do that. And again, there's only so much that the county can do in terms of issuing orders, issuing cease and desist, issuing closures. That's where we do need the cooperation and help of the incorporated city of the jurisdiction where that actual episode is taking place.
Okay, you mentioned it a little bit ago here. Last week, the state identified that glitch impacting coronavirus data. What has that glitch had as far as an impact on us and our county numbers and our understanding of what's going on in our situation?
Well, what you see through the weekend in particular, end of last week and weekend, was we had an abnormally large reporting of numbers of tests, and we put an asterisk on those to denote that was a huge kind of data dump from the state of California and catching up. And so I think we're going to work to see if we can ascribe what day those should have been reported and maybe smooth out and even out the numbers. But again, we mark those with an asterisk to indicate that's not the day-to-day results that we get back. That does represent a large grouping of tests that were backlogged that came in. I'm glad the state fixed their problem. I'm hoping they have it smoothed out and fixed moving forward because, again, we rely on the quick turnaround of testing in order to have some sense of what's happening. And so it's our hope that their data is cleaned up and that we can all get a better sense and picture of what's going on. on. But again, it's not one individual day. We are looking for trends over time.
Right. Supervisor, let's talk about the school year. A lot of school districts have already started the year online. A few are going to be starting here in the weeks to come. Any updates on when they might be able to switch to in-person learning? What has to happen between now and that period of time to make that happen?
Well, for elementary schools, there's a waiver process, and the county put out the guidance about what schools need to do to apply for the waiver. Some will start applying. Our public health officers will review it, consult with the state, and then potentially get the green light. But that's only for elementary schools. For the rest of the schools, we have to be completely off the state monitoring list, which is going to take us some time, and we'll have to be off for a little while. And so, I think when you look at the experience of other places around the country that are opening schools, it hasn't appeared to have gone super well in a lot of places. And so I think we have to obviously do everything we can to get our case counts done, work to support our schools to make sure that they're equipped with testing and what they need, and navigate through it as best we can. But I know as a parent, a lot of us are settling in with the reality that we're likely to see distance learning certainly through the end of the year.
Yeah, the uncertainty of the future is one of the toughest things, I think, for so many parents out there. All right, Supervisor Nathan Fletcher, we appreciate your time, your insight, and all the work you guys are doing. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Andrew.
All right, talk soon.